Do you despise fear and challenge at every minute in real life and games? Then it will be interesting for you to try the scariest MMO horror games collected in this collection. The Dark Pictures Anthology. Cinematic horror games offer two unusual options for cooperative play. The first allows two players to plunge into mystical stories together, and in the second, up to 5 people can sit behind one screen and take turns controlling the selected characters. A great excuse to get together for movie night. In Man of Medan, a group of amateur divers find themselves on a ghost ship during an excursion in Little Hope. Modern students encounter a witch cult, and in House of Ashes, the soldiers who have taken refuge in the temple are accompanied by monsters. In these games, the plot and the fate of the characters depend on the moral choice made in the process of passing, which means get ready for the fact that opinions with friends may differ. In Labyrinthine, you will go to the hedge maze that has become a popular location in various horror films. What hides the next turn? Creepy monsters, or the long-awaited exit? It's better to find out together with your comrades. This horror game is as mundane as Phasmophobia. For example, a regular compass and a rocket launcher will become very useful items. Scattered notes will help you find out the history of this place. And the gameplay consists of RPG games and puzzles. It is also interesting that splitting up in Labyrinthine is not a bad idea. Dead by Daylight? One of the pioneers among the asymmetrical online horror games, the gameplay of which is based on the scheme of one maniac against several survivors. Well, or non-survivors, if the maniac turns out to be quicker and smarter. At the moment, Dead by Daylight is perhaps one of the brightest and most popular representatives of games of this direction. The project has an extensive player base and receives regular updates with new interesting content. In the advantages of the project, in addition to intense and exciting gameplay for both sides, as well as a convincing horror setting that allows you to get your portion of fear, you can also count a huge number of maniac characters, including the heroes of many cult horror films. SCP Secret Laboratory. At one time, a unique and extremely interesting creative project SCP Foundation was launched on the network, combining elements of science fiction, mysticism, and horror. It is unique both in its form, pseudo-scientific articles and stories devoted to the activities of a secret non-existent organization that isolates paranormal and mostly dangerous objects, creatures, and phenomena, called SCP, from the public, and in terms of the degree of openness. One can actually take part anyone who wants to enough imagination. This determined the high rate of development of the project and the diversity of its content. Soon, computer games began to appear within the universe, among which SCP Secret Laboratory can be considered the most terrible. The game takes place in one of the laboratories of the SCP Foundation, which contains dangerous objects, some of which escape. You can play both for the staff, scientists, experimental prisoners, soldiers, and for one of the objects presented here. If you're looking for some truly scary horror that you can play with your friends online, be sure to check out Deceit. Moreover, the game is available for free and has no problems with online, in case friends are busy. The player wakes up in a spooky, abandoned asylum along with 5 other strangers and learns that half of them are infected with a virus that turns its host into a hideous and deadly monster. The task of the players is to figure out the infected and destroy the poor fellows while they are in human form. You cannot kill the transformed monster. Well, or carefully hide your little bad secret, introducing discord and mutual distrust into the ranks of the uninfected. If the role of a monster fell out, in general, intrigues and deceptions, communication and interaction with other users, as well as an abundance of horror or fun, it all depends on the company you play with, are guaranteed in Deceit. Friday the 13th, the game. And here is another representative of online horror with asymmetric gameplay, using the topic of confrontation between a group of survivors and a maniac with supernatural powers, which is popular among young people. Moreover, the setting is based on the cult film franchise Friday the 13th, which clearly adds to the game's appeal in the eyes of horror fans. In addition to the recognizable maniac and other movie characters, the developers filled their project with many other visual and sound elements that convey the spirit of the 80s and 90s in which the franchise takes place. As for the gameplay, it is virtually identical to that offered by Dead by Daylight, hide-and-seek games with a maniac, during which you need to find and collect parts for a boat or car, or repair a landline phone. last year. Asymmetric horror that took the idea of Friday the 13th, the game in Day by Daylight. The game has survivors and a killer spider, but the gameplay differs significantly from the listed candidates. For example, people are divided into classes: medic, scout, engineer, and so on. And each has its own role. The scout can detect traps, the medic can raise comrades to their feet, and so on. The spider, on the other hand, can become invisible and move quickly, and then appear behind the backs of its victims. As you understand, the killer has many advantages, but if you play well as a team, then you will surely be able to outsmart him. In Silence presents the gameplay we have already described in a new light, as the player who assumes the role of the monster is almost blind, but has hypersensitive auditory abilities. Survivors will have to solve puzzles and look for key items as quietly as possible. You might have seen something like that in the A Quiet Place movies, with tension that builds by the minute and reaches its climax when someone steps on the toy. The game is much scarier than its competitors. However, the survivors here are not so helpless. They can set traps, use perks, and even arm themselves with rifles and a secret arsenal. But it's better not to make noise. Secret Neighbor, a multiplayer horror game similar to Day by Daylight and Friday the 13th. This game takes place between the first two acts of Hello Neighbor. A group of children decided to go to the house of a suspicious neighbor who, judging by their assumptions, kidnapped their mutual friend. And everything would be easy if the team did not have a traitor who must substitute others. The system will automatically assign users to roles. Children will collect keys and cooperate with each other in an attempt to figure out the traitor. And the disguised neighbor will use various gadgets, set traps, and scare his comrades in every possible way, trying to win their trust and thwart the plan at the same time. According to the plot of the online horror Hide and Shriek, two high school students decided to sneak into their school on Halloween after midnight to find adventures for their asses. And everyone at the same time wants to scare a friend. The essence of the game is quite simple. In short one-on-one matches, gamers need to scare each other using various spells and traps. At the same time, the players remain invisible all this time, so it is problematic to track down your opponent. Whoever can scare the enemy more often and score more points wins. Depth, another game just like Day by Daylight and Friday the 13th, but the role of the maniac is assigned to the shark, and gamers go to explore the underwater world. The survivors will have to find the treasure and use it to purchase new equipment, from weapons to underwater mines. And the predator, you can choose one of 7 types of sharks, will deal with the unwanted guests of your home. There are also AI-controlled opponents that will prevent players from completing their tasks. Another great game that has 90% positive reviews on Steam, over 20,000 in total. If your favorite game is not included in this list, write in the comments. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to our channel, watch our other videos, press like, turn on notifications, and you will always be aware of what to play today.